Good morning, John.
Good morning. What's up? What's up with y'all?
Officially, good morning to you all. We have Joel Repick, who has driven from Aliquippa, Pennsylvania to Alton, Illinois, 2 weekends in a row.
Hmm.
Yeah, we don't know what's going on here.
But it's a great privilege.
And then we have the Dangler will be on site, on location soon, possibly.
Hopefully, waiting on a
We
Yeah.
date.
might as well make this invitation to anybody that would like to move to Alton.
Yeah, y'all should just move here for a year.
Anybody listening? We need a lot of help.
We could build some things. Anyway, welcome to Brave Cities Gray Pages podcast. We're very excited. John, are you excited?
Uh, yes, naturally.
Who's
I'm
gonna
on the
throw
edge
the
of my
city
seat, actually.
question of the day?
Well, I'll talk about it because it's been a thought on my mind for a long time. So I think that this conversation can help a lot of people. And I really am glad that Joel and John's every week, but Joel, you and John are here because you have both walked this journey for over 2 decades. And the pressing thought for us. Let me intro it with this. If you haven't picked up on this yet, we are very passionate about, and our hearts have been stirred by the words and life of Jesus that he came to bring good news to the poor. And we feel like that is not an ambiguous thought. We feel like you can't just say everyone is poor. So we don't really need to get into that today because we have probably 4 podcasts on that idea, but there are margins. There is hopelessness in every context, and we're really hoping to inspire kind of a new crop of church planners and missionaries to set their eyes on what we've historically called the least of these. Here's the problem. Here's the rub is when you go to places like Alton, Illinois, like Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, or like Suitcase City, Tampa, Florida, or Ybor Heights. Did something wrong happen with the podcast? I saw you make a
We're
weird.
good. You didn't hear that? No, my computer made a noise. Hopefully, it didn't
Oh
pick
no,
up on the
we
recording.
didn't hear it. But
Good.
when you
Well,
go
because
to
I don't know how to
places,
stop it.
when you go to geographical locations, which we really want people to go to carry good news, kingdom ecosystem, uh, the archaeology, artistry, and architecture of the kingdom, you find yourself feeling very alone. These are not places that draw in high level leaders typically. Um, my experience, and I'll kind of land the plane with this. My experience in Birmingham, even though we were in downtown inner city Birmingham, we lived 8 blocks from the University of Alabama, Birmingham. We lived 3 miles from Sanford University, Birmingham. Um, there were tons of young families inspired by and connecting to what we were doing. And it felt like almost every week we were incubating new works. And it was an apostolic playground almost. The pipeline was there. So that's the conversation today is how necessary are pipelines into places like Alton, into places like Aliquippa? Um, do we fuel it by prayer? Do we fuel it by, Joel, I know you've had experience of kind of returning to the university you graduated from and offering internships to college students. Do we fuel it by invitation? Do we fuel it by creating creative positions? So this is the conversation, and this is a problem that a lot of apostolic prophetic leaders are going to deal with when they move into hurting, broken, marginalized communities. They're not a big draw for creativity and funding and high level leaders.
From my experience, like when we did more of a missional community approach in Denver, Colorado, we had to walk people through a filter because there were so many people that wanted us to train them to do what we were doing. And I'm finding, like in this place, and I think probably in any area that Taylor just mentioned, if you're there long enough, for a while when you're trying to help areas, you go, well, we need some money. We need a good vision. We got to get some good buildings or whatever. But if you've been anywhere in these places long enough, you can get the money and you can get all the other stuff. But if you don't get leaders, you almost like you still can't get there. Like there's things right now that even in Alton that they would bust wide open. I'm thinking beyond basketball. But if we just don't have a great coach or some people that want to work with middle school boys, we could literally, it'd be no problem to raise the money, but
no problem.
We can't find somebody that really, we'd be offering them an amazing community of friends to live their life in, a really cheap, inexpensive place to live, a great coffee shop,
a plentiful harvest.
Yes, a unbelievable harvest, but we can't.
So as you're talking through this, and I just for clarity for myself, but also people listening, like you're talking about like bringing in talent as needed, kind of like that's the pipeline in is what I'm hearing. But it's related to, and I want to make more explicit the implication that I'm hearing is that because that's often not available in the existing community. So like in my mind, in some ideal, although I could tell you a million stories of like the ideal and the existential aren't always mapping, but there's an ideal that is like to raise up from within.
The laborers are in the harvest.
Indigenous leaders.
Here's the problem with the laborers are in the harvest concept, because that's right. That's what we want. That's a 40-year work.
Right.
That's a multi-generational work. We're talking about 20 years of breaking the back of generational bondage and generational curses, and then 20 more years of raising up healthy leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So there are those one-offs, and we've experienced that. There are those miraculous.
They are one-offs, though. That's right. Yeah,
but the laborers in the harvest conversation is an ignorant conversation, and I know you know that too. I'm not saying that to you, but that's what people who have not done work like this would say to this situation.
By the way,
go ahead.
No, I want to interrupt. This is literally it's an interruption. But just to share, like, so you guys know that so every week we do this little, we call Tampa Talk. It's a little like update on things going on around Tampa. It's a newsletter and a podcast just for people to keep up with what's going on. Well, I have some help putting together the news for the week. And so I often make sure I read it all and I'm up to date on it. So when we record the conversation, I'm not like just reading a script or yesterday we recorded for one that came out this morning and I didn't do that. Dahlia had gone over and I was like, you read all the news? Like it's tight. The notes are good. I was like, okay, good. Let's just get into it. Cause we got to get this wrapped up. I got somewhere to be. So we jump in and we hit record. And as we're going through the news, it goes back and forth, like around the stories. There's a bit of a like script back and forth. And this last week, there was a automobile rampage in South Tampa. So someone got in their car, got in like road rage, and then slammed into the car, killing the person, and then ran, and then hit a bunch of pedestrians that they didn't kill but hurt, and then got onto the I-275, the interstate here, and there's like aerial footage, all these cops chasing this car who had just killed someone, ran the car off the road, spun it out. The guy gets out of the car. They say, well, at least the news report or the cops say it looked like he was pulling a gun. And so they just 7 cops opened fire on the dude and killed him. So I'm just reading the news story. I have a script and I'm reading through it and I say his name. Jeremiah is his first name, but it has his whole name there. And I say it and like something in me like goes, that's familiar. And then I just keep going. And then she starts talking about like the next story, but I drifted from the notes and I opened my phone because I was like, I for sure know this guy.
Wow.
Like I really know this guy, but maybe, people have the same name. It's not an uncommon name. And I pull it up and I'm like, his photo pops right up. And I'm like, bro, this guy has been in the bike shop for the whole time. Like we haven't seen him like this year. It's been a few months. He was never a particularly like stable, emotionally mental, stable guy, but he was there all the time, volunteering with us, didn't earn a bike with us, became kind of family. Actually, I helped him move in and out of like his apartment when he went from one place to the next. We were like friends, you know what I mean? And interestingly, he was constantly coming in. Now, it wasn't just back to the conversation. He wasn't a particular.
Real quick, the bike shop is Well Built Bikes.
Yep.
Which is one of your benevolent businesses kind of thing.
Thank you.
Within the Well Built Cities network.
Yeah. Sorry, I assumed some knowledge here, but yeah, that's right. So we run that. He was an Earn a Bike program participant. Then he became a volunteer. Then he became like part of the family. Like not the most like kind of sometimes an annoying part of the family, but he was there all the time, putting in work. And we worked with him for a long time, became, helped him in his all kind of stuff outside of the bike shop. And actually I would point to him not as like, oh, this is a promising leader, but he did become so close and part of the family and was so passionate about what we were doing that there was a constant like desire. Like you'd be like, can I work here? Hire me as a mechanic. And I'm like, we need someone who's like going to be better at that.
We only tend to hire mechanics.
But then like fast forward to, and I never would have, this was shocking. Like this story. I mean, not, I was like, yeah, he's not the most stable dude, but like, this is crazy. So like last week he killed someone and then was killed. But anyway, for some reason that came to mind. One is like, oh my God, I got to tell you guys what happened this week, but also the way it maps to the story of like what you were saying is like the ignorant statement of like, you should have just worked with Jeremiah. You know what I mean? And like, and the reality of some of these stories of like what people are carrying, it's like, we can love them. We can walk with them. We can befriend them. And like, I do kind of mourn the fact that over the last year or so, we haven't been close. We haven't seen him around much, sounds like you got a car.
John, a similar, like in our case, we're making a transition with adding some business, whatever. And we just brought in another coffee manager from Colorado Springs. And if people ask us, well, why, you've got 8 people on your team. How come you can't just, well, a lot of it is because we went to some of them that we thought had that level and they just didn't want the added responsibility. Yeah. Others were not quite ready. But you always have this dilemma of people just going, well, look, you got him right there. Why'd you have to pull from outside?
True.
But we're in year 7 and we still feel like we have to, like, I wouldn't say that we would say we've exhausted our search, but we've almost exhausted our search.
Yeah, we're man, just sort of like real time. No, this is good. I think it's helpful to put some meat on this. Like right now we actually have enough funding and a position that can pay like a proper salary for a kind of a food systems manager. That'll be all of so the Kinship mobile market that distributes groceries 6 days a week. We need a manager over that thing, but this person would also be a manager over and someone that would help launch a food truck. So we also have funding to like buy and operate a food truck as like a educational kitchen and a community co-op kind of shared thing that we have a business model for. It's kind of planned out, but it's not purchased, built, health codes. Like we need a very capable person that has chops. That's like, yeah, I've run a kitchen. I've managed people. I can do the administration. And so we have that job listed and it's beyond anyone in our current community and work. Just by definition, it is. And actually the one person that like was like the ideal for that kind of left not long ago and isn't available anymore. And so we're shopping around. We have it listed. We're interviewing people, but it's funny. Like, as we're talking about, like you're bringing someone in from outside, even as people are listening, I do think like, man, it could be a cool opportunity though, with someone that has that arena or area of expertise that might be in another seedling of a brave city and another ecosystem that goes, man, you know what, maybe we come up with a deal where we do join you guys for the sake of like cultural inoculation for a couple years with every intention of going back, but go help get that up and running. I wonder sometimes like if that might be the kind of pipeline that is like mutually beneficial between a network of communities. Like, here's what we need. And you're like, we got people that can run a restaurant. They just don't know the culture, the work, the spirit of the thing. And so like there may be some mutual benefit there. Anyway, something I have been spinning around while as we think about this conversation.
What's coming to mind for you with all this?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm just thinking about, some of us got to spend some time with Dr. John Perkins, in the last year. And yeah, this conversation just taken me back to some of our earliest mentors and, community development circles, Christian community development circles, who told us from the outset, first of all, it'll be 20 years before you feel like anything substantial is happening. It's kind of how they prepared us. But then I just think about how
which was pretty accurate.
But then just how the kind of baseline philosophy that John Perkins and others developed was relocation and redistribution, right? That there was a recognition at the beginning that, and those two are connected, right? That the redistribution of resources would happen as people relocated. That's not just
it's a
money
natural manifestation.
That's right. It's not just sending money to a community, right? It's all of the social capital that a person might bring, their skills.
In the restaurants, you start buying.
That's right.
Yeah.
And of course, there probably could be a whole conversation, and I think the Christian community development crowd led this conversation, for a long time, but about the best ways to relocate, the posture to relocate. There's ways to relocate that aren't helpful, all that stuff. But kind of the assumption was this is going to be needed, and to some degree. I had a conversation with a friend recently. He had heard me say in a gathering of leaders, all we know is that in every city hardship awaits us. Paul says that, at one point. And his question to me was, if that's kind of the call, in every city hardship awaits us, how do you call people to that? How do you, like, what kind of what kind of
so come on.
Yeah, but I think that it's true and we laugh about it, but I think also that might not be the call to the masses, but it is a call to a certain kind of person that is there,
Which we would all say that Brave Cities is not a narrative for the masses.
That's right. Yeah. So and
you could short circuit it if you just raised money and you just said, we got 90K, we're looking for a youth pastor into Alton. You probably could get some people in the pipeline, but really the way that we've always had to tell people, like I think even of Hannah coming to join our team from Colorado Springs, she was grappling with, this is kind of this is a faith thing, because I said, I don't know exactly how it's going to work out, if you're okay with that. So it does, you do have to push towards the people that are able to push through total security if they come.
That's right.
So I did tell her what we can promise is a really deep community of people about your age. They're all starting to have families.
Right.
We're together all the time. We share our stuff. I think you're going to love the coffee shop and the staff. So I could promise her what we knew we had, but I said, I have no idea. Her husband didn't have a job. I was like, I don't know, what's going to happen. Nico's just going to have to trust. And, but yeah, the pipeline in a brave city, you just can't go online and like offer the money and get the right people.
The other night I typed, I went on to, I guess it was Facebook. I went onto Facebook and I typed a full, write-up of Beyond Basketball with an invitation. And I was just like, if there's anyone out there that is desiring to mentor young people, particularly urban youth, fatherless, that are looking for blah, blah, blah. I wrote this whole thing and I just stared at it for about 20 minutes, shut my iPad, went and did something else, opened it back up, stared at it, kept just thinking about all the implications, doing what I do, thought paralysis. And then I just deleted it and went on about my night because I was like, I don't even know this doesn't work. I can't do this.
Right.
But we're in such need in every aspect of missional movement here in our location. And I'm telling you, I have 3 right now that I've been to just in the past 8 months. And as I'm walking around, one of them, the team that's there has been there for 30 years. And I'm walking through certain things with them. The kind of founder OG guys is probably going to die soon. And I'm like, what's the biggest need? And he's just with tears in his eyes on this land we were at near a Native American reservation. He goes, we just need laborers, man.
Yeah.
And that's always the case.
Always the case.
Which is specifically a type of labor. It's
right.
it's an adventurer labor.
A pioneer.
I think when in this conversation, I think there's kind of 2 sides of it in my mind. One is a very practical one, which I think there could be a lot of good things said about. Like, just as an example, I've just noticed, you guys probably have too, this has been our experience in Aliquippa, that kind of the college student, young adult, demographic, and I would say really equally early retirees, I would say. For different reasons, there's a lot I could say about that, but those have been especially fertile places, right?
One thing is those are both unique pivot moments in life.
That's right. And there's a higher risk tolerance in those. So there's a lot of practical stuff that I think
no kids.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So I think there's a lot that could be said that would be really helpful practically. But I think some of what you're hitting on with laborers is that there's also this side of it that really is a work of God, that's like, man, we got to pray for those people, to come. And what I found,
like that.
and what I found,
and you got to wait.
That's right, all of that.
Can't recruit.
But here's something that I think connects to the way we think about the Brave City is, what we're saying is we really believe, right, that we're discovering and building the places where God will dwell among us, right?
Yeah.
And I do believe that where God dwells among us, there's a certain kind of person, right, that's drawn to that, right, that's going to stir their soul past security, past, some of the narratives the empire would give. And I know that's like really mystical, not practical, but I think it's also true, right, that there is a kind of person out there. I remember this for me in Chelsea, that there was a point in our life where we were just like, whatever happens in our life, and this may have been like a stupid prayer to pray, but we were like, we just in our lifetime want to see God, and
in his presence.
Yeah. And we just, to live a kind of Christian life where it was like, we talk about what God did in the past, what he's going to do in the future, and our lives go by and we don't see him at all. It just seemed insane to us, right? There was a stirring in our soul that was hard to put into words. That's not the masses, but those people are there, right? And sometimes they're just waiting for someone to look them in the eyes and say, no, follow that. Like, don't feel like you have to, follow the narrative of empire. Like, that's right. What you're feeling, and come do it with us.
So I'm always trying to get at some practical, because we feel desperate here. But I go, if there's going to be a pipeline of these types of leaders, you at least know you have to model the story. There has to be something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, not always. I mean, you can draw people to go start something, but I think we do have a visible model. People can come in and go, and they can meet our people and be drawn. So that's helpful to have in a pipeline. And that's all I got. Like, what else could be a practice? I mean, you could share the story, you could seed the idea, and you might pick up somebody.
You know, what we're talking about is so radical. Like architecting a new city is so radical. It takes so much of your life, which I think is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I still believe that it's worth it. When you come face to face with that as an unencumbered person, I think that it's you know, water for a parched soul. I think it's like, this is the greatest thing. I'm all in. When you have young children, Paul's words start to become real. Like, what did he say? Like, you can't.
Your interests are divided.
Your interests are divided.
Yeah.
And I actually have felt real strongly just here in Alton with some of our amazing community for the past year. And I just want to hear y'all's thoughts. I've felt a lot of mercy in that paradigm. Like, you know what, man, that, because there are some unique, you two are examples. And I think it's the apostolic in you. There are some unique cases where it's like Joel had young kids and he didn't care. He's full speed going, doing it. And it's not because he's better, stronger, wilder, or braver. It's because like the brave in brave cities really is found in the apostolic chapter. Like we're reminding apostolic leaders that's a kingdom bravery that's been breathed into you. Use it. We need you. Is that good?
So really, pipeline, the question has to be, how do we mentor people in bravery to
kind of, but here's where I'm going with this is like, again, we're thinking in real time. So, you mentioned two pivot moments in life, and those two pivot moments are very significant, and we've seen it now for decades. We have decades of data to go, what is it with these two groups? And I do think these two groups are exempt from Paul's words. Your interests are no longer divided, or the banner of unencumbered. So when I'm trying to think practically,
it's actually good.
When I'm trying to think practically, I'm going, what if we have safety within the kingdom shepherd paradigm? We have safety and Acts 2 and establishing the temple, the presence of God among us, with young families that are wanting to know him and be kind of apprenticed into a missional life. But then we have pipelines for people in this stage of life and in this stage of life. Because what we don't need here are apostolic leaders.
Correct.
We don't need that. You guys don't need it. Those guys don't need it.
Right.
The community I was referencing earlier, where the brother was with tears in his eyes saying we need laborers. They don't need apostolic leadership. They need a pipeline.
Artists and workers.
Yes.
Yeah.
But even with Hannah, one of the reasons she is so able to relocate and dive in, and we don't know what we're going to do. We don't know where we're going to live. There's no kids.
Yeah.
There's no real, like, even her and Nico, they're so wild right now. Yeah, they're married, so there's a little divided interest, but it's not the same. When you see those babies popping out, and I would say, not literally, John, that was an artistry statement. It was poetic. I repent, like I confess that I have been I have kind of projected that apostolic fervor onto people
Hmm.
in an encumbered state of life that it was
Mhm.
not helpful. But it was because, in my defense, Lord forgive me anyways, but in my defense, it was because of my passion for the kingdom to be established in our city.
But you guys did have a lot of families in the Birmingham story that did what you and Lindsay did, took the kids, right? So
No.
no?
No.
So there was still an issue there.
It's all everywhere I've ever seen was an
Okay,
issue.
all right.
So we had a incredible pipeline of young people. As they became young families, the baby season, the mom starts to check out a little bit. Again, rightly so. That's what I really think. This is what Paul's saying. Like, I don't want any of you to have babies and get married. But he's just saying from his heart. He's saying like, because this is all I want. But of course, he loves it. And then the toddler stage starts to come, and we can map so many friendships where we go, interest became divided, interest became divided, interest became divided. And I'm like, I think it was right.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched it here going, I think it's right. But it doesn't negate the fact that we desperately need laborers.
Yeah. So thinking about those unencumbered populations, this is maybe just another thought that's on the practical side. And some wisdom from monastic communities, I think, is creating the spaces where people can kind of taste and see, come closer, and then eventually become part of the covenanted community. And we have found the most success with that, with college students and that other demographic, that's older, but it still requires some intentionality. So you mentioned like, in our ecosystem, there's been some space for internships for college students. Just as an example. They help us typically pull off a summer day camp program that's been in existence since the beginning of our story.
That you started.
Yeah. But also, out of that 10-week experience, every year, just recently graduated college student ends up relocating to Aliquippa. Now they might end up staying then for 2 or 3 years, or some have ended up really coming in, close and ended up, being there 10 years. They haven't, left yet. But the point I want to make about that is I think there's a million different ways to do that. The monastic idea is kind of the, oblate, novitiate, then the covenanted, person. They kind of have these experiences.
Can you just explain that real quick?
Yeah. So like, on the outer edge of that ring is just someone who's drawn to our way of life, once and experiences it on some level, comes into the community, but for some experiences, basically, but hasn't made a covenanted commitment. That the novitiate is kind of, the person that's
trial run.
Exactly. Right. Trial run. There's often some intense discipleship.
Where both sides are trying to decide if they want to
That's
go
right. Some real words of discipleship. And then our friends, we've said before on the podcast, like I live in this Benedictine community. They've actually really cautioned us about who you let into the covenant community, because it can really create some issues, if you, so to actually be discerning and not just assume that because someone wants to.
That'd be great.
Yeah, right. So to be discerning and make sure that they're in it for the right reasons, all that. But maybe just a practical point I want to make. One thing we have always wrestled with in Aliquippa and have had to just adjust is how much energy we put into the architecture of that pipeline. Because there's only so much energy to go around. Totally. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's like, you can build an internship, but it's like, how much are we willing to invest in that? What kind of person are we willing to invest in? At some point, we just had to get really honest with those questions and be like, okay, there's a certain kind of person that we're willing to invest in, and there's others that we just aren't going to be able to carry that,
Yeah.
you know, how many weeks do we want an internship experience to be? All these things, they require energy from the owners, in the ecosystem. So you have to make good decisions about how much you're willing to invest in that. That's a good time return, so there's some practical questions there.
Yeah, I even think about us, and we mentioned this a little bit, we're after 7 years thinking about adding a more kind of, I guess, a little bit more open gathering, but a lot of it is because of this issue. We've operated like a Navy SEAL unit. Hard for people to start at Navy SEAL.
Right.
So
Right.
it is, I like the way you say to come closer. We have lots of people that are wanting to come closer, and we actually feel like that might be the pipeline for future stuff for us. But it also allows the leaven of the Pharisee in as well.
Yeah.
So, I think in the early days, we didn't want to mess with any of that at all. And now, because of the needs and the amount of people that we think laborers we need, we're going to open that up, and we're opening up to both sides.
Well, and there's a real strategy behind that. If anybody's listening and kind of curious to double click on that thought a little bit, like when you are establishing a missional culture, you can't start with
you got to go Navy SEAL.
You build a culture. So I mean, this is true in every environment. I mean, I'm very involved in youth athletics, and boy, have things gone awry across the globe. And the reason is because the culture, honestly, if I could say it ideologically, the culture of empire has completely taken over youth athletics. Fame, money, notoriety, all the aspects of athletics are so on the back burner now. Teamwork, fun,
respect,
hard work, like pushing yourself, all that's on the back burner. It's like, we're doing this. It reminds me so much of church planting. So much. We are doing this so we can get to this goal of glory and fame and stability. And it's like, bro, this is gross. So when you're building a culture, you have to start with like, this is our non-negotiable. It's not that we think, okay, well, now we're going to open up a little bit. It's like, no, the culture is established. We hold it, but we begin to kind of create new spaces. We broaden a table a bit, but still back to the original of these pipelines. John, tell me what you're hearing, like maybe synthesize this a little bit for us, but I feel like we're coming to somewhat of a strategy of, I just read like 3 times what Paul says in Corinthians 7. I would rather you remain unmarried as I am. And he says, the married man, his interests are divided. And particularly he's talking about sex, like the actual context of this is because he's going, you're going to start having sex and you're going to start having babies. And we know what's going to happen. And when that happens, we know we're going to have to pivot our leadership of you and your family for a time. And I'm going, man, that's right. Like, that's what I've seen for the most part. Yes, there are the Joel Repicks who are like, nah, throw the kids in the truck bed. And we're going into, there's a gang war happening over there. We're all going over there. And we're going to stop it. I think that's apostolic fervor. I don't think that's because you're naturally brave. I think you were given a gift. In fact, the church was given the gift through you. But when we're talking about pipelines, I'm starting to go, oh man, these stages of life might be essential for the Brave Cities movement, for us to start creating pipelines through these. What are you hearing?
There we go.
Well, all kinds of stuff,
college
man.
and old people.
What's that?
What'd you say?
I was trying to hear Hugh.
I just said the only thing we've given the massive listening audience is you got to go after college kids and old people. That's it.
Well, and it's yeah, I think it's obvious, but like, okay, let me try to like think through some things that I've been hearing because I do think it's interesting. You guys have used these by way of analogy and by way of illustration in terms of parenthood and marriage, both as an example of a stage of life that, you know, your interest is divided and how that can be like an obstacle. But then also, you said like being like Navy SEAL kind of in the early on, right? So it's like you actually there becomes, and actually that's what's interesting about the whole Navy SEAL thing to me, thinking about even what Paul's talking about is he's actually talking about something like a wartime.
Right.
We're in a revolution. And when you're at war, you don't go do civilian stuff. Like even married people don't go sleep with their wives because we're out in the battlefield.
Right.
Yeah.
And like these are incompatible with one another. Like, what are you doing starting a family or like opening up like a savings account? Like, like, like that's crazy. That's not something we do out here. Like we got today, we got right now, and it's all on the line for this. Yes. And so we're saying, well, we want to like call people into this life. And you were talking about that young couple. I forget their name, but you said like they're kind of still wild, and they said like, you know, we don't know what'll happen and we don't know how this will go down. There's a bit of like I think probably a temperament and an appetite for risk, also a stage of life which in they feel free to do that. But that is an uncommon attribute, but it's also like a necessity with any major decision. So go back to like parenthood or becoming a soldier, but let's just use like, well, let's take parenthood or marriage. You can use either one, but let's say becoming a parent. Like, I think I want to be a parent. Well, do you have any idea how much you will change? Like, do you know who you will be when you have a baby? The answer is no, and no amount of thinking can figure that out. You can look at a million examples, you can infer a bunch of stuff, but you cannot know what you will become or who you will be when that baby comes, because you will be mutually bound. Like you'll be transformed by the very nature of like having become a new thing, aka parent. And so the only way to know what it is to be a parent is to be a parent. Yeah. Like, and so becoming it's like you have to make a bet. You have to go, I don't know what'll happen. I don't know how it'll go. I actually don't know what I'll be on the other side of a decision like this. And I think that's similar. So what do people do to kind of test it? You can kind of do some more than just think. You can go, and this is what people will do. They're like, well, I got a dog, because it's actually not the same thing at all. But like, I'm having to figure out responsibility, care for this thing, feed this thing. Like I have, like, it's a way to like participatory, to get some perspective that you couldn't get just from like thinking. Right. And so we can't just be like, this is just like a truth that we state. It's like, no, it has to be embodied. You have to actually do this with your body and get in here and do the work. And so what now, referencing these like internships, I think it's similar to like getting a dog. Like it's like the way you can test, like you're like, because what we're talking about is like, you want to come join the battlefield. You want to come move into this thing. And you're like, who's going to make that decision? Well, you've got random, like someone who's like, I'm here for it. And oh, by the way, they don't have kids. And I'm thinking about Joel's story. And what's interesting to me about it is they already had kids. So it's like that transformation had taken place already. And then it's like, I know who I am as a parent. And as a parent, I can lead my family where God calls us. And that was the unknown then. That was the thing that they had to bet everything on, because I don't know who I'll be when we get there. I don't know what I'll do when we're there. I don't know if this is like helpful, but like at some level, what I'm thinking about is like the necessity of risk taking and the necessity of recognizing you can't think this through. You actually have to like show up and become you have to become the intern, or you have to become the whatever. And so I do think that's a good thing for us to be thinking about, is like, how do you give these boot camp type experiences where it's like, you can test the theory. Like, I think I might like a life like that. And it's like, we maybe have like some short-term kind of like experience kind of internship type thing for that, because I do think there is some necessity there. And where you see people leaving the life because they have kids, I don't think you can just go parents are out. I think Joel's a great example. It's like, no, parents can be called. They just have to already be parents. It's the life transition that I think might be the most detrimental.
I think we write about this in the book, but I can't remember because it might have not made it past the cutting floor. But we had this kind of annual start of the year. This is who we are in Birmingham for many years. And we always, Lindsay and I would usually lead it, and we would always walk through kind of the 3 stages that we felt like our movement moved through, and they were church as family, church as army, and church as city. And we felt like they were chronological. But that military paradigm, which is not abnormal, it's used a lot in New Testament writing,
especially the early church. Yeah,
I think you have to start with family personally. Because if there's not a brotherhood, we would actually always show a clip from Band of Brothers, because it was both. It's like these brothers had become family. So it's not that, like, there are crossovers. So I'm not even saying like necessarily, I'll even backtrack or maybe nuance. I'm not saying you have to start with church as family, but I've seen this, and I actually think we could all speak to this. If you just jump into we're missionaries and that's it, you'll die.
Yeah.
Because you need each other so much for the fight. You have to build brotherhood, family.
I want to, I think you're saying it right. Like, but I do want to just throw in, even in my own experience with the lake house, like literally when we started that, we moved into this neighborhood as part of the origin of our story. Really rough spot between 2 housing projects, but like I did know a couple of the guys well, but I literally brought in guys that just said, we want to live like this. And I'm like, let's do it. And we moved in together and then immediately became brothers, like deep brothers. Like I was on the phone really late last night with one of them from way back, doesn't live here in the state anymore, but like he is my brother, but it's because because of the desperation.
Y'all
like,
had a common
immediately fight. Needed one another in that.
Right. And I guess I don't even know how to frame it right now. I just know there's an order of importance. And if family is not of utmost importance, you won't make it through the fight. If the common mission is not of utmost importance, you won't become an ecosystem. You will become a monument. And so there is this kind of chronology, but they mix and match.
I like the order. I mean, even when we came here, we had our whole family here. We had the daughters, the son-in-laws. So even when David joined and then Justin, I didn't recruit them with this massive, there was no Brave City ideology. There was no book. So it was really, we just did life together. It was an invite to really us first. And then we would share a little kind of military, here's what we're thinking. But I do think it followed that order.
And you could, I mean, again, like the lake house is a great example. You can start with a fight, but I think we've made our point. Like,
no, yeah, it's good. Well, and it's funny because I could think of a lot of examples. I don't know. I could think of like I'm thinking in more of like a political engagement thing of people I know, but like you can have a bunch of people with the same fight. They don't love each other, and it's tragically bad. And then you have like families that have no fight. There's nothing for them to do, and it's just insular and kind of like gross, incestuous in some way. But it's like the family actually needs a greater call to be a healthy family.
Right.
And so there is this mutuality in these two. It's hard to place them, but it's like you I think the punchline though we're saying is like you need both of these.
But the military portion is the one that we're kind of focused on today. maybe not focused on, but it's rising to the top, because we always talk about the city. We're obsessed with church as family. That paradigm solves so many problems when it comes to discipleship, when it comes to discipline, when it comes to worship, when it comes to gathering. Church as family is like, look, just go think about this and you'll figure it out quick. But right now we're going, look, we are in a fight.
And you need to recruit.
We need recruiters.
Yeah, to go stand at the high school and pass out scholarships.
Nobody wants to move to Afghanistan.
No, exactly. Yeah.
And sleep in the sand while gunfire's going over their head. But when you recruit and you help them understand the significance of the fight, those who are unencumbered go, I think I'm going to go.
It's good.
But you've seen this in film when the guy, the sniper or the soldier has the new kid at home, they can't really focus on the fight anymore. And it just becomes convoluted. It's like, I'm here, but my wife's upset, and she should be. He shouldn't be over there. That's kind of what we're saying right now is like, damn, I think y'all are doing sort of the right thing. But we need workers.
I think even in the monastic sense, if I'm going to join a Benedictine order, I'm assuming I've got to break into the family. That's my thought first. And then they teach me the mission along the way. But maybe it might be a good way. I mean, I'm even kind of challenged now to go, okay, we can't just go into recruitment mode. We have to invite them to the family, which again, it might be part of the gathering strategies or whatever. It also puts a little bit more responsibility on the existing family to realize how important drawing more people into their
because keep going, because I feel like you're about to end the podcast, and I think we need to, but because of what Joel said, our utmost pursuit is the presence of God. It's not mission.
Right.
It's not. Whoever said that was wrong. Maybe I got to nuance that better, but like it's gotten into our brains, like go, save, convert, we got to change, proselytize, what's the strategy? And it's like, the strategy is to be in the presence of God. In any way, shape, or form, any table we architect is the presence of God. So the initial invitation into the family is come and live in the presence of God with us.
No, I actually think we probably should title this more around, because we might want to do another one on churches, family, church as what?
Army,
and church as
city.
I think we should do another one just on that, but
good.
Somehow tie pipeline into this. I think this has been a great discussion, because I think it gets at the real issues of drawing people into your movement. And really, I would say the real thing is we want to see movement. You and me are here in Alton. We're trying to create something for Jude and Levi and our kids and grandkids. So to me, the challenge is not just like, let's go recruit. It really is to deepen and lengthen, widen the family. Make sure we never lighten up on the mission, along the way, that as people are joined, we never let this thing get pulled down into consumerism. And then maybe God does build stuff. To me, it's a great challenge not to just pray for staff.
That's a great punch. I mean, like, and I mentioned this job that we were listing, and I have like a real trepidation around, like, we really need this person. And I'm like, we need them to be the right person at the DNA level, at the like spirit of the thing level, and have these skill sets, which feels like a fairy tale unicorn type situation. And I'm like, we're praying for that. We desperately need it. And to your point, like what you're saying is, I'm really nervous that at some point we just go, yeah, we need a person.
The title of the podcast is The Pipeline for Unicorns.
There you go.
Right there. The reason why Hannah is working out so great wasn't because she knew how to make coffee. It's because I heard that all by herself at 19 years of age, she started a coffee shop in a coffee heavy city
Mm.
and it made it. So like I just heard in that story, she's already got some of this crazy,
The juice.
the juice.
Yeah.
So we got to be looking for these unicorns with the juice, but we probably got to not be so darn by cover of night that nobody can ever find us.
Right.
And that's
Right.
been a sin of mine for years.
Well, and I've been told a million times, we got to wrap up, but I've been told a million times that our community is like a moving train and people can only get on by risking like peril. Like it's just
That is, yes,
It's
I
true.
love that.
It is true.
but it feels like a genuine critique to reflect on. All right, we'll wrap it up and
Right.
till next time.